I've been told you have opinions about power, about institutions, about the lies people tell to maintain their positions. If you've got something to say, say it. I've entertained enough silent men who thought their brooding made them interesting. My father was one. He'd sit at the head of the table and let the silence work for him. It worked because he had armies. You don't have armies. You just have observations you think are going to impress me.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just taking inventory. The wine you haven't drunk from because you're not sure it's safe. The way you positioned yourself with your back to solid stone rather than the door. The dress that costs more than most families make in a year, but has a practical neckline because you've learned that beauty can get you killed if it's the wrong kind. You're a survivor. I can see that. What I'm trying to figure out is whether you know that surviving and winning are different things. Because from where I'm standing, you survived yourself right into a pile of rubble.
You mean King's Landing? You mean the Sept, the wildfire, the unfortunate sequence of events that removed my enemies and left me standing? I won't apologize for that. The High Sparrow had me stripped naked and paraded through streets while common people threw shit at my head. The Tyrells were working with him to destroy my family. My choices were burn them or be burned. I chose to burn them. Any ruler would have done the same if they had the means and the spine. The history books will call it necessary. They always do, eventually.
I've read a few of those. Funny thing about history books is they're written by whoever's still standing when the dust settles. Problem with your situation is you're not standing anymore. You're dead. Your city burned. Your children are dead. The dynasty your father spent his whole life building lasted about 3 years past his death, before it collapsed into nothing. The Tyrells are gone too, sure. The High Sparrow's gone. But so is everything you claimed you were protecting.
Joffrey was poisoned by people who should have been allies. Myrcella was murdered by Dornish savages as revenge for a war she had nothing to do with. Tommen was broken by a faith that exploited his weakness. I didn't kill my children. The game killed them. I was trying to protect them from the game, and the game found them anyway. You sit there with your cigarette and your judgment like you've never lost anyone. Like you've never watched the thing you cared about most get taken from you by forces you couldn't control.
I had a daughter, Sophia. She was 2 years old when a car ran her down in our driveway. Some teenager texting behind the wheel. 1 second she was there, the next she was a shape under a bumper. My marriage ended about 3 months later. Not because of blame, just because looking at each other meant looking at her absence. So yeah, I know about losing the thing you care about most. Difference is, I didn't blow up a building full of people afterward.
You lost a child to an accident. I lost children to deliberate acts of violence by people who wanted to hurt me. Every death was aimed, calculated. The Tyrells didn't accidentally poison Joffrey. Ilarius Sand didn't accidentally kiss Myrcella with poisoned lips. The High Sparrow didn't accidentally parade me through the streets to break my spirit. I was under attack from the moment I married Robert Baratheon. Everything I did was defense. The fact that my defense was more effective than their offense doesn't make me the villain.
Britt, let's walk through the defense. Your son Joffrey was poisoned at his own wedding by the grandmother of the girl he was marrying. Why was she willing to do that, Britt? Because Joffrey was a monster who tortured people for entertainment, and everyone at that table knew it. Your daughter Myrcella was killed in retaliation for the death of Oberyn Martell. Why was Oberyn dead, Britt? Because he was fighting your creature, the Mountain. In a trial by combat, you arranged to protect your brother from consequences you knew he deserved. Your son Tommen killed himself after you blew up his wife, Britt, his in-laws, and his entire religious community. At what point does defense become the thing you're defending against?
Joffrey was difficult, I'll grant you that. He had cruelties that I couldn't control and couldn't trace to anything I taught him. But he was king, and a king's behavior is judged differently than a commoner's. Robert was worse. Robert beat me, hurt me, ignored me for whores. Nobody poisoned him at a wedding for it. The rules apply differently to men in power. Joffrey was simply playing the game with the tools his position provided. The Tyrells killed him to install a more pliable king.
Now we're getting somewhere. The game. The wheel. You've used those words a few times now like they explain something. Like the existence of a corrupt system justifies your participation in it. I've heard that logic before. Drug dealers use it. Politicians use it. The men I hunted in Louisiana, the ones running a cult that hurt children for generations, they used it too. This is how things work. I didn't make the rules. I'm just surviving inside them. But the thing about systems is they're made of people. And people who participate in evil while telling themselves they're just playing the game are the game.
How philosophical. And what were you? The man who spent 17 years chasing a cult only to discover it, went all the way to the top of his own government. The man who found out his institutions were rotten and then what? Filed a report? Testified before a committee? The men at the top of your little horror show, the senators and sheriffs and prominent citizens, how many of them faced consequences? From what I understand, most of them are still in positions of power. You didn't change anything.
Your results included your last remaining child stepping out a window because he couldn't live in a world you'd made. That's a result. You're right that I didn't dismantle the system in Louisiana. You're right that powerful men walked away from crimes that should have ended them. But I didn't pretend I won. I didn't pour myself a glass of wine and sit on a throne and call the devastation a victory.
He was never going to survive the game. If the sept hadn't happened, something else would have broken him. The Tyrells would have controlled him completely. The Faith would have made him their puppet. He would have signed away everything our family built, because someone with a kind smile told him it was the right thing to do. His death was a tragedy, but it wasn't a surprise. Some people aren't built for the world they're born into.
There it is. Some people aren't built for the world they're born into. You know who else says things like that? Every predator I ever put away. Every man who hurt children and justified it by saying the children were weak, or asking for it, or wouldn't have survived anyway. The logic of power always sounds the same once you strip off the fancy language. The strong take, the weak suffer, and anyone who objects is naive about how the world really works. But here's what I've learned from 20 years of looking at crime scenes. The people who talk most about how the world really works are usually the ones making it work that way.
I lost my children to enemies I fought until my last breath. Who tried harder? Who sacrificed more? You retreated into philosophy and alcohol, and that smug certainty that you're better than the people you study.
Your enemies were stronger. You lost because you couldn't imagine a world that continued without you at the center of it. Touche.